What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Finding Direction. This week on the podcast, I'm sitting down with Maria Brito. And to give you a little bit of Maria's background, she's an award-winning contemporary art advisor. She's a curator. She is a former lawyer. She's an advocate for creativity. And most recently, she's the author of a book called How Creativity Rules the World. All right. Now, on this episode, a few of the things we talk about is how, as you begin to grow up in your life, how you need to start making your own decisions. And when you do that and you take control of your life, that's when you're really going to step into the life that's meant for you. All right. Once you let your decisions lead your life. We also talk about how Maria was able to take the leap of faith from being a lawyer to following what her heart was actually pulling her to do, which was something entirely different that everybody said didn't make any sense. But as you will hear in her story, it turned out in a really lovely way. All right. We also talk about why creativity is so important, and we talk about so much more in this episode. So without further ado, we are going to dive right in, and I'll see you on the podcast. Maria Brito, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you here.
Hi, Stu. I'm excited too. And hello, everybody who's listening.
Love it, love it. So fill us in a little bit, Maria. I'm curious, what was life like for little Maria as you were a girl growing up?
I grew up in Venezuela, South America, and I was a performer, a child with a lot of artistic talent. I used to sing, and my parents thought that was very cute until it became a more serious thing. And I got all these phone calls from record labels and touring bands. And my parents were like, no, in this house, you are an attorney or an engineer or a doctor. You are going to do that. And so, I sort of sold out because little Maria was very close to her parents. It was a conservative family, a Catholic family in South America. Really is very, very old school. And I decided that I wanted to go to law school because I was very good reading, writing. I had a lot of passion for things about justice and social justice. Yeah. And so I went to law school and I graduated from Harvard Law because I moved alone on my own. My parents didn't come. I moved from Venezuela to the States. I graduated from Harvard Law and I practiced corporate law in New York City for 9 years, hating it with all my might. So that's little Maria until Maria 32. So that's it.
So if we dive back into, I'm curious, this original moment you spoke about where it was you started to do some of these creative things, dancing, singing, all this stuff, and you had real opportunity come to you. You know what I mean? Like an incredible opportunity, it sounds like. I'm curious, what age were you when that was sort of initially squashed by your parents?
In my teens. Because it's not like a Justin Bieber type of crazy thing, right? I was I was in my teens and a young adult, if you will. Yeah. And I see this is what I wanted. And my parents said no. So, and you have to understand the context because this is very important, right? If I would have been a teenager in the US at the time, I would have said, okay, I'm going to go, I'm going to wait tables, I'm going to sleep in my car, whatever, right? The things if you think about it, there are options. There are options. You're going to say, I'm going to make money out of waiting tables. I'm going to get a job at the Gap and I'm going to fold clothes. Those things are not available in South America where you actually can pay for your rent and the life, right? Not when I was working, much less now, actually. It's a mess right now. But when I was growing up, you would have never got, and that is part of the reason why, if you think about it, my parents wanted me to have a dependable job because they thought I was going to be there with them, or that I was going to spend my life there. So they didn't see that there were other things available to me. And if you go back and look at the stars of, singing, music, whatever, it's very difficult to find any one of them who actually did it without their parents' support. In fact, the parents were like the ones who gave them, the push, right? Like, I mean, if you think about like Britney and Shakira, actually, whom I've met, and she is just 1 year younger than I am. And she made her parents move from the city where she was born in Colombia to the capital so that she could pursue her singing career, right? So I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I didn't have my parents' support, and it was really impossible to do it on my own.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with you where it's like, when parents are supportive of what you have, it's a huge foundation and a pillar that is massively helpful and can be an advantage. But I'm curious, like, let's say someone's listening to this and they had a similar experience where when they were younger, their parents didn't really support them and they had an idea and they squashed it. I think it's such an interesting thing, even to kind of see like the full circle of your life, where I think it happens too often where when we're younger or we're kids, if we don't have supportive parents, that something can get squashed down and pushed down and like shoved away, when eventually your soul and your nature of who you are as a human will always come to the front. And I'm curious what you would say to anybody that feels like they're currently going through a similar situation where they have something that maybe initially in their life, maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was an uncle, an aunt, or someone that was like, this isn't realistic. You can't do this. You need to go this other path. And they feel like they have this thing that they're kind of like pushing down. Just like, what advice would you give to someone like that to kind of help them?
Well, I think that there is always an opportunity for anybody to reinvent themselves and do things that makes their heart sing and makes them feel alive. And I always say you're never going to be as young as you are today, right? I mean, that's the truth. Yeah. And like I did, for example, I reinvented my whole life at the age of 32. And it's not that I was old, but I was not obviously going to go for a performance career at that age. But I ended up doing the thing that I was meant to be doing because I'm extraordinarily happy and I am fulfilled and I have a business that is an industry leader. And I think that the only limitations that stops us from getting to those places of happiness are the ones that we put ourselves once we are in control of our lives, right? Like our parents cannot dictate anymore our choices and who we are. And so that's very important to remember, that if you have been contemplating a career change, or if you have contemplating the idea of having your own business, the only thing that's stopping you from doing that is you.
Do you think sometimes your parents not being supportive is, and I don't want this to come off in the wrong way for anybody, but is it an excuse for some people? Like, oh, my parents said I can't, shouldn't do this when I was young, so I'm not even going to try, because sometimes the reality is sometimes it's easier to not try than to try knowing that we could fail.
Definitely. I think that that's an excuse, because there is how much control your parents can have over you when you're an adult, right? And I think that very much aligned with what you say. It's easier to put the blame on others than to actually say, well, I failed, or I made mistakes, or I didn't do what I was willing to do or dreaming about doing because I didn't do it, right? I mean, that is a very hard pill to swallow. But I actually think that once you become honest with yourself and attain full responsibility for your life, then things have to be easier to a certain degree, right? Because then it's like, who am I going to find to blame? Who am I going to find to like put on, all this burden of why I didn't do what I do? And so one thing I love to say is that when something in your life doesn't work out, when something fails, let's say, I like to put the idea of the failure on the project or that particular venture and not you, if you know what I'm saying, right? Like, this thing failed, but not me. right? It's like, okay, look, certain business ventures fail, but that doesn't mean I fail. Is the business venture, right? I mean, so I still am responsible for whatever happened, but it's the failure is not on me. It's on an idea that didn't work, right? Yeah. And so that is not to disassociate yourself from your part on what worked and what didn't, but it is to give you perspective on that. Not everything you're going to do is going to be a huge success, but also the things that haven't worked out are just ways to show you lessons, that are for also sure, to prevent you from something worse sometimes, right? And so, we can only see those things in hindsight, though. That's the thing, right? When we go and turn our heads back and say, whew, thank God that thing didn't work out, because where would I be, right? Or what would have happened? So I think that is, the taking responsibility for our actions and our lives is actually super important for success, but also do not take every failure as if you are the failure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think like taking responsibility is huge. But I definitely remember one point in my life very much in alignment with what you're saying, where it comes to, taking responsibility in your life, everything begins to change in that moment. Like I remember a moment in my life where I began to realize if I fail, it's my fault, but also if I succeed, it's my fault. And I think we need to sort of own this ideology in every area of our life, where it's like, if I'm happy, genuinely happy every single day with my life, like you were saying, you're like, I know what I'm doing because I'm happy every single day. That's your fault. Like if you're depressed or sad, as harsh as it is to say, like it's your fault. And I think once you begin to have ownership around whatever it is you're focusing on in your life, that it's your fault. It could be your health, your relationship. You give yourself power regardless of if you're at where you want to be or not, because once you own it, now you have a power to be able to shift it and to change it. And that's really what can begin to start to change the trajectory of your life. And so I'm very much in agreement with you that once we take responsibility for our life, even with the things that our parents say, our life begins to change. And I guess one thing I would love to hear from you is, what was your parents' response in that moment where you're like, hey guys, I'm not doing this legal thing anymore. I'm done with law school. I'm done being a lawyer. I'm done. I know I am called to do something else. What was your parents' response?
Well, I had already left. I was paying for my life. I was married. I was living in New York City. So they did not have much control. I actually thought about what are they going to think, but I didn't think about what they're going to think. Like, I'm afraid of doing my thing from now on. It's more like, how am I going to tell them this? Because obviously, look, there is an enormous sacrifice, financial and your time that entails to go to a school like Harvard. And then, you pass the bar exam and then you work so hard, right? So they didn't understand, right? Like they were like, what? I mean, what exactly is that you're going to do? And, I think that to a certain degree, my dad, for example, is still like, my daughter, the lawyer, like that kind of thing. But look, if that makes him happy, so be it, right? Totally. I know who I am right now. I know that I am not a lawyer. I know that I reinvented my life spectacularly, really. And I respect that if they want to think about that and that they want to see me in that way, that's them, right? And not me. I think that my parents really mean well. And but if they mean, parents actually prepare kids for their world and not for the world where we end up living and doing things like that. So I think that this is their world and their ideas that are very outdated. And, but I think that they see that I'm successful, that I'm doing fine, that I can, like, I'm happy, and I think that, look, I live my life for me. And that is something that I I have embraced and accepted as a mantra, like, this is my life. And I am very grateful for what my parents gave me. But I also feel that, like, I'm living my life for me.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So when you left and you said, I'm not doing law anymore, what kind of inspired you to take the next step? Or, like, I guess more importantly, how did you figure out what the next step was?
Look, I mean, for the longest time, maybe 2 years really before quitting, I was already thinking about what was going to be my next move, because I had like different jobs at different law firms. And it was almost like I always took the next, it's one of the things where, like, hunters are always calling you and like, oh my God, and this is going to be amazing. And they're going to, and I was like, okay. So I always thought the next job is going to be better, right? The next law firm is going to be the one. And the problem was not the law firm. It was me. I had nothing to do with that environment. The one who was miserable was me. The law firm is the law firm. I mean, they don't sugarcoat anything. They know that you're going to have to work, and they usually tell you, right? Like, you're going to have to work. Like, the lifestyle, what is a law firm with a lifestyle? Either is a small law firm where you don't really make a lot of money and it's equally boring, or is a law firm that paints this picture that the lifestyle is because they take you to drinks once a month or something. That's the lifestyle, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so, after I did all the law firms, I was like, okay, the problem is that I don't want to do this. It's not the law firms, because, and I had this fascination with contemporary art, because I grew up, when growing up in Venezuela, my parents actually thought that taking me to galleries and museums and traveling, because we didn't have a lot of money, but the money that was the surplus was always for travel. So I was sent to travel the world, like Europe and stuff like that. And I was fascinated by art history and contemporary art. And, I was like, I'm not going to go back. Actually, for a second, I thought maybe I can go back to school to get a master's in art and business, which was one of the ideas that I had. And then I was like, no, man, I'm not spending $70,000 on this. There's no way. You know what? I'm going to use the money that I have in my savings to build a business. So I contemplated a lot of things. It was, if anybody is thinking about shifting, if anybody's thinking about opening a business, it's not a decision that is like overnight. It's not a thing that, oh my God, no, it's an accumulation of ideas and points where you start like getting fed up with whatever it is that your current conditions are. So, and then you analyze and you evaluate a lot of different options, right? And that's the right way of doing things. And then I hate to say the right way, but I think that nobody should really jump suddenly, right? Like, you do have to do a lot of research. You have to do a lot of soul searching. And then, right? And then you jump. And no matter how weird your option, your new option is, or you trust yourself because you've already done the research, because you've already, dug and like looked inside a lot, and you're like, I'm going to do this, right? And that's what I did. I mean, I spent, like the first year when I was like contemplating the career shift or whatever, I talked to a lot of people in different industries. I talked to people in fashion. I talked to people in the arts. I talked to people in non-for-profits. I spoke with a lot of different people to hear their ideas and thoughts and this and that, right? Like, what I got from like the majority of the people that I had conversations with were like, girl, you're so senior. You can't start from scratch, right? Like, you can't start from scratch in any of these companies because nobody's going to give you a job. But then you come from the side. And then I was like, yeah, you know what? That's true. And also, I don't really want any of these people to be on top of me, right? And I started paying attention to people who did the job that I currently have. And I saw that there was an opportunity for me to do the things that they were missing. And I started taking notes about that. And most of the big disruptors in industries are usually outsiders because
Right.
it's hard to disrupt the industry you're in as a person who's been there for a long, long time, or also since the beginning of your career, because you tend to get comfortable and develop a lot of blind spots. And also,
Yeah, you're
when
in it.
you're
So
in
it's
it,
harder to see it as a whole.
it's harder to see it. And also, well, you get some sort of like a roadmap. Oh, this is how things are done, right? And you could potentially question them, but you don't necessarily go against them, right? And so that's what I did. I was like, I'm going to question everything. Why is this done this
Yeah.
way? Or why is nobody doing this? And that was my opportunity. And I said, I also saw like a couple of people were kind of like successful, but they don't necessarily work too much. And I was like, oh, but I do have the work ethics of an attorney, right? If like these people are working 2 hours a day,
Yeah.
I'm gonna come and do 10 because that's
Yeah.
actually like not that much. So I did have those advantages, and I said I'm going to open an art advisory company that is going to humanize and demystify the art world for layman, and is going to explain things in plain English. And I'm going to build a business where it's going to feel fresh. I'm going to utilize a lot of content, social media. Mind you, that was 13 years ago. Instagram
Yeah.
didn't exist, right? And so I was pioneering like blogging. People were not blogging about art
Yeah.
at all, or like exploring the intersections of art and fashion, art and music. Nobody was doing that. And I said, okay, this is going to be my spot. And it was. And I pride myself on saying that I started doing these things before anybody was doing them. And I started writing about them and documenting them and showing them to the world before everybody else was trying to do the same. And the good thing is that because I have done already so many things, I'm always like 2 or 3 steps ahead of
Yeah.
like people who do the same thing. Because I am like, I already found something else that I want to explore. Not that I open a different business, all the time, but like, within a business,
Yeah.
you are always going to have to reinvent yourself, or someone else is going to disrupt you, right? And you don't want that. And, I feel that has given me the edge.
Love it. And I know one big thing that you obviously talk about and teach and help people with is this idea of creativity.
Yes.
And so I would be curious, like, because creativity and doing some of my studies and research on you, one of the things that I think I'm in agreement with some of your philosophies is that creativity really is like a muscle, right? And if it's like if you don't use it, you lose it. And there's sort of this societal view. It's like, well, some people are creative and some people aren't. And I think we're both in agreement that that's a bunch of hocus pocus, and you can learn to be creative, and you can strengthen that muscle, and you can flex that muscle so that it can help you grow in every area of your life. And I'm curious, like, what would you say are a few things someone can do who's listening to this to just start being more creative in their life?
Look, I mean, the topic of creativity fascinates me to the extent that I wrote a book about it. But I think that here's the thing. Creativity is not one thing. Creativity is an amalgamation of skills, right? And what are those skills? Is your ability to take risks, is your desire to express your unique ideas. It is your ability to see things from a different perspective. It is your willingness to question the status quo. It is wanting to ask one more question when nobody else wants to ask that question. So this is why a lot of people get frustrated or confused about creativity and about uniqueness and originality, is because they think it's a God-given talent that has been bestowed or provided by the gods and muses, when the truth is that it is a variety, is like a salad of different skills that the truth is anybody can have and anybody can work on them to strengthen them daily. but they don't, because they are just kind of focused on this big, incredible magic thing that's going to come with just one idea when they are meditating in their grottos with the infrared lights and whatever. And that's not what it is, it is not. The most creative people in the world are working, and they are allowing their ideas to flow within their routines. They are willing to also step aside, take some time to think about other things, take some time off from the problems that consume them, where they are trying to find solutions. So it's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It's not that hard. But we have been conditioned to think that creativity is a thing that belongs to certain geniuses, and that you don't have it. And that is a fallacy. And I'm here to bring and shed light to that concept, because as I have not only built my business and done such a transition, I've also had the great privilege to work with not only like the most creative contemporary artists and successful, but also with entrepreneurs and with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, with celebrities, people who have hired me to either work with them on their art collections or to consult on the topics of creativity and innovation. And I can attest that it is something that people come up with their best ideas because they keep working every day on those skills. And also, a very important part of creativity is that you do have to materialize those ideas, and you have to test and experiment to see what takes. If you just leave everything as like this utopian thing in your head and this dream and whatever, unfortunately, none of us are going to be able to enjoy your product, your business, your services, your book, your film, whatever, because it's just going to stay in your head.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. One of the big things I share with a lot of people that's super in alignment with this is it's like clarity comes through experience, not thinking. Right.
Yes.
And it's like sometimes we get so caught up in our head where it's like, well, I could do this and that could work and maybe this thing. And it's like, you're never going to know unless you like do it, unless you lay it out there. And like, especially as like a business owner and things in that sense, it's almost like just putting yourself out there as naked and being like, hey, this is what I created or what I made, or like, and just allowing yourself to do that and not get caught up in, I think sometimes the fear that stops people, where it's like, oh, well, what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? And I think you have to learn to flip that on its head and say, not what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? What if people don't like it? But what if it goes right? What if it goes the way that it's supposed to go? What if this changes somebody's life? What if this leads to the life you've always wanted? And allow yourself to step into the positive thought of what if it could go the right way? And if you do that consistently enough and kind of flex this creative muscle that we're talking about, eventually you're going to find yourself in a place that you really are happy. And so a few last questions I have for you. One, you mentioned earlier that you go, I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm happy. Yeah. And I think that is such a gold nugget that's real. You know what I mean? It's like if you're not happy, there's a potential possibility that you're not doing work or something that really excites you, that you like, that you enjoy. And then everything affects everything. It dribbles into your relationship. It dribbles into your health. It dribbles into your work. It goes into, overflows into every other area of your life. And when you really have found the thing that you're supposed to do, there is this sense of happiness. There's a sense of peace. There's a sense of alignment. And I'm just curious, like, how do you think people start to find the thing that makes them say, just like you said, I know what I'm doing because I'm happy?
I mean, this might sound corny, but obviously happy and happiness is a daily job, and it is and it's not, I mean, I wouldn't just say strive for like, oh, I'm always happy, right? I mean, because that is like this toxic positivity that people have talked about, right? But I think that the way that I see things is that if I am satisfied with what I'm doing, if I find happiness and fulfillment, I have deadlines, I have demanding clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are things that are like painful, right? And even through those moments, I'm like, but I still enjoy this, right? It
Yeah.
would be really sad if I had wasted all these amazing moments at a law firm. It would have been so sad if I would have been a prisoner of those offices that made me so miserable, right? And you always have to have, sometimes I have, like this desire to complain about something, and I may, but then
Yeah.
I like bring myself back to my center and I'm like, think about where I was 13 years ago and look where I am today and all the things that I have accomplished and all the things that it's almost like I honestly, on a day-to-day basis, I don't remember anything about that time because it was
Yeah.
like what I call them my dark ages. And now I'm in my renaissance, right? Like, so
Yeah.
like literally the same thing as history, right? I was in the dark ages of my life and now I'm in my renaissance, and it's a very important, beautiful place for me. And look, I just have this sense of gratitude. And I think that when people spend time in something as important as your job or career or business or whatever, and you hate it, like you said, that's going to manifest in many different areas of your life.
Everything.
And it's just going to give you consistent. First, it's going to be nudges and then it's going to be punches, right? Like, I mean, because like that's how it is. Yeah. So that's how it is. And I just didn't want to get punched. I was already getting all these nudges, right? And look, it's long. I'm telling you, it's like all the law school years, all the years practicing. It gave me a foundation that is invaluable. The truth is, but it is what it is. And I don't want to look back with like also like anger about that, but I am like, look, I moved on, right? I'm so grateful that I was able to reinvent myself with something so incredibly different and to find success and happiness and a joy and a world of different people that I respect, that I have fun with, that like I feel good, and I think that we have this kind of like as humans, we do have a birthright, right, to explore and to develop ourselves, and we cannot grow if we're stuck. That's for sure, right? Like, I mean, you don't grow, you don't develop yourself if you are stuck in one area, if you're stuck in your career, if you have a sense of stagnation. And that is something that a lot of people unfortunately suffer when they have had a job for too long that they hate. And they need the the paycheck, they need the benefits, whatever. But the price is extraordinarily high if you think about it. In the long term, the price is just your life, basically.
Yeah. And I think two beautiful things you said, and it's so true, is it's like, well, if I leave here, I got to pay bills and this and that and the other, and you're thinking of what it will cost you to leave. But a really powerful question is to ask yourself, well, what is it going to cost you to stay? Is it, you know what I mean? And if you really start to take a look at that, like, what's it costing me to stay here and to be miserable every single day? It's a lot, and I think when you face that kind of brings color to the situation and brings light to it and kind of shows you what's really going on. And I think a second thing is for anybody that's listening to this and they go, maybe I am in the dark ages in my own life. I think one of the major things that you need to do to leave those and go to the Renaissance, right, is take courageous action. Right. And say, like, I need to step up. I need to demand a higher standard for my life. And I need to like own that I deserve more in my life. And it's going to be scary, and you're going to have to step into your courage part of yourself. But if you do that, things are almost always better on the other side. We as humans are really smart people, but sometimes we get just like we were talking about earlier, sometimes when you're in the situation, just like when you're in an industry, it's hard to see what's outside of it. And sometimes when you're in these dark ages, it's hard to see what's outside of it. But I think for anybody that's listening to this, that's in that phase, hear from both of us that there's brighter things on the outside once you get outside of that world. But you gotta really ask yourself, well, what's it costing you to stay? And then you also gotta take those courageous actions. And so,
absolutely.
I'm curious if Maria, if people want to get more info on you, I know you got your book, you got so many things you're doing. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, my website is mariabrito.com, and that's BRIT as in Tom O.com. Then there are links to social media, that are email forums, if you want to get in touch with me and whatnot. My book is called How Creativity Rules the World. It's published by HarperCollins, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Bookshop and, anywhere that you can get your books. And, that's it. That's kind of it. I mean, it's easy. I just hope I made it easy for you guys to be able to get in touch with me.
Absolutely. And we'll put all that in the show notes so everybody has easy access to it. And the last question I have for you before we wrap is, we have one question we ask all of our guests because we want to help people find direction, but do it through action. And so I'm curious, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
Wow. I'm a big fan of action, as you've already, said that. And I think that if for those who are listening, look at the things that you've been shying away from. Look at the things that you have been postponing. Look at the things that you are afraid of. For example, if you are the kind of person who loves an email but are so afraid of picking up the phone, just go please and pick up the phone and do that, right? And if you have been, because look, I mean, the universe supports the actions that, and it doesn't, I love the idea of the bold and courageous actions, right? But sometimes people need a ladder, it's step one, right? Is okay, I'm going to pick up the phone. Step two is, because I've seen it all. I've seen people who really just do very bold things, and they get away with amazing results and returns, right? And I have also seen people whose comfort and their level of, the way that they feel taking chances, it's not necessarily something that they can go from 0 to 100, right? So look at the things that you're avoiding. And actually, why, right? I mean, why are you avoiding this, right? Or what is it? The fear of failure, for example, which all of us have, right? And so what's the worst? I think that if you speak out loud about the worst outcome that could happen, what if I call and they say no? What if I've worked so hard on this project and it actually, it falls flat on its face, right? So name it out loud. Is that going to kill you? Is that going to be the end of your life? For the most part, the answer is no. Right? So then what? What's stopping you? Why are you doubting? Why? People are going to judge you whether you do it or not. That's the truth, man. Because we live in a very judgmental society, and people have taken this kind of hobby or sport about pointing fingers and criticizing and labeling and judging. Well, too bad, because if you do not do it, you're going to be judged regardless, right? So might as well invite a great chance in your life to reinvigorate yourself, to shine with your own talents, to do the things that you love, rather than being stuck in a place of complacency, which is the worst thing, honestly, for the human soul.
Yeah. Love it, love it, love it. Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for the wisdom and everything you shared today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Stu, and thank you, everybody, for the time. Take care.
Take care.